Scottish folk songs and proverbs which he would later use in his poetry. His poems speak of his love for so many women, including Jean Armour, who became his wife. There's not a bonny flower that springs, by fountain, shaw, or green. There's not a bonny bird that sings, but minds me of old my Jean. Now, these lassies were obviously the influence behind most of Rabbie's poems. I mean, you've got a poem about the names Nancy, Anna, Alison, Katie, Mary, Jeannie, Doris, Melinda, Molly, Bessie, Jessie, Peggy, Maria, Delilah. Oh, I think that's the one. And it's fair to say he was fond of them. It was these women in Bud's life who were responsible for the transformation of the ordinary eldest son of a struggling tenant farmer into the iconic Scotsman whose poems have survived the test of time. Burns drew strength from women, they drew a source of comfort, a source of inspiration, and a source of strength. His love of the lassies is perhaps best summarised in its excerpt from Green Brother Ashes. Old nature spoils the lovely dears, and noblest work she classes. Apprentice hand she tried on man, and then she made the lasses. The irresistible beauty and sensuality of the women who surrounded Burns' life is evidenced in the fact that he was responsible for fathering, or perhaps it should be irresponsible, for fathering 13 children. Much of the appeal of Burns' work is that it is so relevant today, despite of the fact that it was written so long ago. Now, while we still love the lassies, what man here has not had cause to curse them at some point in his life? They can infuriate us with their lack of logic. They astonish us as they change their minds in an instant. And above all, the most maddening thing about them is that we, as men, do whatever they say, because we will do anything to please them. And how well Burns do this. To see her is to love her, and love but her forever. For nature made her what she is, and never made another. I wonder what Burns would make of today's women. Women today have their own careers, some are working mothers, they even have body piercings and tattoos. I wonder, for example, what you would make of Freya. Very independent woman, she has a university education, plays the bagpipes, and she drives a fast car. Not a woman like Freya in Burns' day. And these women, of course, can do what men can't. They can multitask. You may not know this, but as well as her many other talents, Freya is also very fond of knitting. And on a recent trip up to Caithness, travelling on the motorway between Glasgow and Stirling, as she so often does, she was knitting as she went along. But she was spotted by a policeman who, obviously somewhat alarmed at Freya's lack of attention to road conditions, put on his blue flashing light and signalled for her to stop. And I think, pull over, pull over. So Freya looked at him and she got a wee wave and a smile and said, no, it's a scar. But this multitasking can be annoying sometimes. On my journey up today, I was stopped at traffic lights outside Perth, and I noticed that the car in front, there was a woman in the driver's seat with a mobile phone in her right hand, because she's fiddling with the radio, trying to switch the radio station. And the light changed to green, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, go, come on, the light's green, come on, go. So just decided I took my horn just a wee bit, just to push her to go through. I did that, as soon as I did that, she stalled the car. Eventually, she caught her through the amber, so I was stopped at the red light. How could you not see the woman green light? The speed of light, for goodness sake. If I can see it, how the hell cannot you? The next thing I hear from behind me is, go, it's me! Now, I wonder what Rabbie would think of the young folk of today and the poetry that they listen to. I mean, the closest thing young folk get to today's poetry is probably rap music, with artists like Eminem and 50 Cent. I can tell you, if there was rap music in Rabbie's day, there would be any need for those ones. I can just see it now, the notorious R.A.B. half the rabbit, ode to the light wind, a rum is like a red, red rose, and dinner the lassies and in the hose. I take this opportunity to apologise to my granny. One final point, not my eye explains why men don't read and why women can't read maps. Apparently, it's a popular social psychology book. Well, I read a page of it, and after reading that, I realised it was a pile of nonsense. For the simple fact that women can read maps, and men do listen to women, at least reading maps. I know this because when my dad comes to visit me in Edinburgh with Rona, he always arrives on time. But whenever he comes down the road, he always seems to be late. This is because he gets lost. The last time my dad came down the road, I just heard on the radio that there was a car driving the wrong way up the motorway. Concerned for my dad's safety, I phoned him on the mobile. Oh, Dad, there's a car going the wrong way up the motorway. You take care of yourself. No, stop. There's not just one car going up the wrong way. So, gentlemen, I'm sure we will all agree that we will forever be in debt to the fairer sex, and that we will forever love them. It's to the lassies that we owe everything, our wealth, our health, and our happiness. Till all the seas gone dry, my dear, and the rocks melt we the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. Burns knew this and sought to capture it in poetry, and it is thanks to the woman of his life that we have this opportunity to celebrate his work. So here's to our lassies, may the eye be here. Gentlemen, please lift your cup of beer, and with one voice and hearty cheer, drain your glasses, for where would we be if they weren't here? To the lassies!
Freya MacMillan, and Freya MacMillan knows this hall better than most. She's been an important member of the badminton team for many years from a young age. She's also run keep fit classes here at the hall, I believe, and has no doubt often been at a tailor or two here. Like Scott, Freya is a very accomplished musician, a fantastic piper, piano player, and all-round musician. Her love for sports led her to go to Glasgow and study sports medicine, where she passed with flying colours and was top of her class. She's now doing her bit for keeping down unemployment figures for the under 25s, because she's chosen to go back to university to do a doctorate in sports medicine. And some of her friends have suggested that she enjoyed student life so much, especially the 5 nights a week of partying, that she just had to find some excuse to stay at university. When I sat down first and saw Freya, I thought it was quite strange. I didn't really think she'd be a girl to date a sugar daddy. And then I was told that actually it is her daddy, because her boyfriend's working abroad at the moment. So, ladies and gentlemen, Freya MacMillan.
Was in fact here. Well, not actually here, but in the old Latheron pub, as a wee lassie. At that age, I didn't appreciate the poems and songs, So while you were all sitting out here listening to the speeches, I was in one of the back rooms eating as many of Pat's trifles as I could before getting caught. I might not have understood the lad behind the mic, but I don't think that really matters at that age. What was important was seeing a community come together to celebrate this Burns dude. Burns night as a young lass was about being Scottish. The haggis and the trifles, the dancing, the music, a right good shindig with all the locals. The connection of all things Scottish in one night. I might not have known words to Old Lang Syne as a young lass, but I did notice it kept popping up everywhere. Weddings, Cayley's, New Year, and as I got a bit older, Saturday night in Waterfront. It was a song that made everyone get up and dance. Is that not an amazing accomplishment? The lad's still managing to get us all up at the end of the night. Now, where would Burns be without the lassies? Without his ready and boundless love of women, he would not have been inspired to create such prolific, immortal works of art. He once wrote, "I never had the least thought or inclination of turning poet until I got heartily in love. And then, rhyme and song were in a manner the spontaneous language of my heart." His first love, Nellie Kilpatrick, inspired him to write at the age of 15, "Oh, once I loved a bonny lass, aye, and I love her still. And whilst that virtue warms my breast, I'll love my handsome Nell. She dresses eyes sae clean and neat, both decent and genteel. And then there's something in her gait, gars only dress but feel. A gaudy dress and gently aired may slightly touch the heart, but it's innocence and modesty that polishes the dark. 'Tis this in Nellie, pleases me, 'tis this enchants my soul, for absolutely in my breast she reigns without control." Now, we all know the tale of Tam Shanter, but what about his poor wife Kate? What would she have thought of Tam's crazy night in the drams? I can liken that to a tale of my own father coming home after a long dramming session in the Glens back in the day. Many times he'd come home blittered. And my mother would have the house clean, the coos fed, and the dinner on the table. I remember one night, my father must have gone one dram too far, and mother lost the head. Just as I imagined Caithness Shanter did that night that Tam took a green. "You! I want a word with you! Just popped in, did ye? On the way home from work, were ye? Just popped in for a wee blether, was it? A cheery chinny with friar and call, a quick pie, boys, and a wee half pint, just to keep ye going like. But just the een though, aye, just the een. And a wee, mind, just the weeest thing. And then you're a wappy, sulky, sullen dame and all that. Gathering her brews, say she is, and just the een. Gathering storm kin, nursing her wrath, aye, just the een bit. Aye, nae bother. Oh, aye, right! Dinna geese at that, Ewan. Just dinna geese it. You came in here 4 in the bloody morning, and ye were blistered. Could ye stop? Could ye speak? And your head right up on the cake. See you were, telling us how you just got back from Keighley with a devil. And how come you'd seen Aunt George's belly button? A blethering, blustering, drunken blethering you are. What a state to get into. Vomit stains down the back of your jacket, wearing somebody else's shoes. How could you be wearing somebody else's shoes? And of course, your wee Now, I couldn't give a speech without referring to some research, as I work in that area. According to the studies, men use an average of 7,000 words per day. Now, most of those words are I, no, score, dinner. And the other 6,980 are just different words for breasts. Another study was recently conducted where 38,562 men were asked to identify what a woman's ultimate fantasy is. Well, 97.8% of the respondents said that a woman's ultimate fantasy is to have two men at once. While this has been verified by a recent sociological study, it appears that most men do not realise that in that study, one man is cooking and the other is cleaning. Just a wee thought for you lassies. Have you ever noticed how all of our problems stem from men? Mental illness, menstrual cramps, mental breakdown, menopause, and when we have real problems, it's hysterectomy. And don't forget about the gynecologist. Primary 6 at Leicester School, and I can remember the lead up to Burns Night. We had to write our own Scottish poems. I wasn't very good at it at that time, so I decided to have another batch tonight. Like Burns, young Scott here likes a dram. And one night, a couple of years ago, got himself in a right state. I'm going to tell you the tale of his goings on that night. You may know him as Scott MacGregor from Reneggy. But this night I acquired him a new name, Scott O'Spanker from Jiggy Jiggy. While Scott sits boozing at Nanny and getting food and uncle happy, he think now on the long Scott smiles, the mosses, waters, slaps and styles that lie between him and a night on the lash, a hip flask in one hand and a pocket full of cash. This truth found honest Scott O'Spanker as he framed Jiggy Jiggy a night to canter. Off he set on a night to Smyrna in search of bonny lasses to be a rebel. Oh Scott, hadst thou but been so wise as take thy father Jim's advice, he told thee well to stay away, for Smyrna was a place to be led astray. He prophesied that later soon thou would be found with his breeks halted. Yet off Scott stepped upon horseback to Nottingham Reigns on the old hidden track. Collected his trusty pony, James Sinclair, the professor. They had been food for weeks to hear them together. Drinking at Blackrock from the old forgotten still, the pair of them then headed to the lights at Rock Hill. The night drave on with sangs and clatter, and the ale was growing better and better. The professor told his queerest stories. The lassies' laughs were ready chorus. The storm without might rare and rustle. Scott didn't mind the storm or whistle. Nae man can tell their time nor tide. The hour approaches. Scott will ride. Wheel mounted on his old mare Peggy, a better never lifted lady. Scott skelped on through dub and mire, despising wind and rain and fire. Whilst holding fast his drink-filled sack, he headed the wrong way, across to Bilchap. By this time, he was across the strand, past the mill and the pool by the well, where Col Southern in a blaze. An organ sounded. It cut like a knife. And the words sung loud. We do the walk of life. Peggy ventured forward onto the light. And oh, Scott saw an uncle sight. Witches and a herd of midget coos all dancing to dire straits. Just James Ford played Eno's organ great. As Scott glowered, amazed and curious, the mirth and fun grew fast and furious. Caitlin and John clicking their heels, while on guitar and fiddle they played jigs and reels. The dancers quicker and quicker they flew. Freya on the pipes louder and louder she blew. Now Scott, oh Scott, had they been queens, plump and strapping in their teens, I would have given them off my birdies for a blink with the bonny birdies. But with their buildings and old hats, lap dancing while smoking their fags. And how Scott stood like Eden bewitched, and thought his very eyes enriched. The witches were stirring their special brew. It looked like it was making everyone foo. Scott couldn't stop himself, he couldn't hold back, and shouted, "Here, give me a drink of that!" He filled his glass in a flash, turned around and made a dash, and scarcely had Peggy rallied when out hellish Clean Sally. So Peggy flies, the midget coos and witches follow, headed to Giddybist towards the hollow. Catch the thief, the witches were screaming, onwards to the water before the rain. There at them thou thy tail may toss, a running stream they dare nae cross. For a witch far before the rest, hard upon noble Peggy pressed, and flew at Scott with furious ettle. But little wist she Peggy's mettle. A spring broke off her master hail, but left behind her angry tail. Now Scott didn't have to go too far, up o'er the road and past the car. He pulled up Peggy to have a rest on the hill, opened up his flask and took his fill. And by the time he got home, he was well at the game. But he should have checked what was in the drink. 'Twas made up of prunes and syrup of fig. Scott was on the loo for nearly a week, and most of the time he was feeling sick. He prayed to God that underneath that gushing torrent cease, and soon his tender scalded rear find drier times of peace. Now, while this tale of truth shall beat, ilk man and mother's son take heed. Whene'er to drink you are inclined, or midget coos run in your mind. Think you may, by the joys more dear, remember Scott O'Spanker's red raw rear. And William Shakespeare dies and goes to heaven. There he meets St. Peter, who asked him, "What is your name, and what were you in your past life?" Shakespeare says, "I'm William Shakespeare, and I was a poet." At the same time, Rabbi Burns dies, and he goes to heaven. St. Peter asks him, "What is your name, and what were you in the past life?" Burns says, "I'm Rabbi Burns, and I was a poet." St. Peter then says, "Well, we only have room for one poet in heaven. We'll have a contest. Whoever can write a better poem gets in. The topic will be Timbuktu, and you will both have 1 hour to complete your task." So after 1 hour, they come back, and Shakespeare says, "As I walk across the golden sands, as I walk across the golden land, a great big ship comes into view. Its destination, Timbuktu." St. Peter says, "Okay, we will now hear from Burns." Burns says, "As Tim and I a-walking went, we saw 3 damsels by a tent. As they were 3 and we were 2, I got one in Timbuktu." laddie is a sorry sight to see, like a haggis without the oatmeal, or a golf ball without a tee, or a kilt without the tartan, or which doesn't show the knee. Without a laddie for a husband, the nights are long and cold. We know this for a fact, because by Burns we have been told. For all that and all that, he says the man's the gold. So if a lassie wants a laddie, she need not search the whole world over, but just turn her eye to Scotland and find what she's looking for. For the bonny flower of Scotland is one that never wilts, and it makes a lassie say with pride, down with the trousers, up with the hips. In reality, our laddies are like pipers in the mist. They bring music to our heart, and many a times a tear to our eye. Let's face it, lassie,